We are looking for a different shape of mindset, a different shift of energy. That old energy needs to evaporate, and really now we need to be all about people and heartfelt, purpose-driven business strategies that have got meaning. We've got to start looking to the future, and this is the reason SilentEgo has come to life, is because it says it in the strap line. It's the soul of the business, and that soul is the whole, obviously, but it starts with the leadership and the leadership team, and it's about bringing people together and being to have more love in the work environment. Let's use that word as a good settler. It's often not, businesses now, and it comes back to leadership, will need to start to rethink about that human integrity and that bringing good people into this operation and giving them flexibility, whether it's contractual flexibility, whether it's time flexibility. We talk about cyber time and cyber hours. The prophecy is we won't be working days anymore, we'll be working components of hours.
Paul Stephenson, creator of SilentEgo and founder of EgoStream. Paul, what was the inspiration behind the font of knowledge, the transmission, SilentEgo?
Well, it started about 25 years ago, actually. Obviously, EgoStream, the last 2.5 decades of experience, coupled with all the challenging times that we're actually in right now, from new world business environments, etc., lent me to think that there's a lot of what I would call dormant talent sitting in unknown leaders and founders, CEOs, innovators and entrepreneurs, particularly in the technology industry. So 25 years ago, I kind of started my career as an active headhunter, running a business where I was actually fundamentally working with business strategies, predominantly from the US into the UK, European market, helping tech companies find a presence and hiring people. So obviously some great interviewing skills and techniques and insights, and lots of stories with lots of household names, which, once you get into a good old story, ends up being quite funny or quite dramatic. So in some respects, it's part of my personal experiences with working with chief executives, managing directors, founders, entrepreneurs, etc., coupled with venture capitalists, investors, PE houses, etc. And I'm launching SilentEgo because there's been some very interesting patterns learnt on this journey over the last 25 years. As we've been working in, high ego environments, and I'm here to sort of express that sort of insight, but equally offering a service which is going to hopefully encourage CEOs, founders and entrepreneurs to come forward to be interviewed in relation to two things. Firstly, express their journey of where they are with their business or where they've been. So this is not all about the new modern leader, but it's also about sort of tapping into the font of knowledge in the veterans, and to create a community. We talk about the community a lot today, particularly with where we are and where we're going, out with the ego, in with the eco. So really it's that bridging process of transmission to bring people to sit in the chair and to be asked some very interesting, deep questions. And I think what's in it for the entrepreneur and the business leader and the MD, it gives them a voice of expression that comes to the heart of the issue, which is all about the soul of the business, not necessarily about the spreadsheet, but more about who that leader is, the way they think, and fundamentally the way they express themselves within their environment. So it's a heartfelt service. It's really all about people, and it's bringing us all together and sharing the stories, the tips, the insights, the guidance. It's just that font of knowledge that I want to encourage people to come forward with and become part of the SilentEgo drive.
So it's really interesting. You just touched on just in that last little piece. You touched on the heart of the matter and the heart of leadership, and you also touched on the founders and the MDs and the CEOs expressing themselves. Are you seeing a change then in leadership styles or in leadership going forward?
I am, I'm not, but it's a very powerful question, and I'd say it's very powerful because the power is it's the energy of the old leadership style is evaporating very, very quickly. So, unfortunately, I have experienced over the years what I would call classic autocratic leadership, which is not a skill. I think people now are beginning to join people. So, what do I mean by that is the answer is the new world leader needs to be, in some respects, thinking about being more heartfelt, being more authentic with who they are and how they actually express themselves within their business environment. And, there's lots of lessons learned. So, just to be more specific, I think we've all come away from what I would call that heavily driven spreadsheet culture, where, it's been a sort of forced fed culture. I think now with culture shock and what's happened over the last number of months and the future of work and how that's changing, I think leaders now need to be thinking about adapting, dare I say it, more feminine values, be more sort of open and a little bit more friendly in style, more empathetic, having more emotional intelligence, being able to resonate with people because, to be honest, businesses of the future will need to offer lifestyles. It's not just about a job. It's being able to offer opportunity, and it all comes back to the heart of the issue. Heart of the business, which is the leader or the leadership team. And this is the whole purpose and drive behind SilentEgo, is bringing that message to a broad audience to say, hey, don't suffer in silence, release that ego and become more heartfelt. So in reality, that's pretty much where it's going.
So life beyond the spreadsheet. So using the spreadsheet as almost driving a different result than if you started looking at the human dynamics.
That's right. I think that the spreadsheet has been the holy grail of business for quite a long time. It still is. It has a big important part to play, but it's not everything. Okay, I think that we are looking for a different shape of mindset, a different shift of energy. That old energy needs to evaporate, and really now we need to be all about people and heartfelt, purpose-driven business strategies that have got meaning. And then we've got this overall collaboration of team, call it that, and it's not work for anymore. A lot of business leaders talk about, them as an example. They use that word them and who's us, so you've got the leadership team and you've got them, the employer. It's not like that anymore. It's all about us. It's the big us. And I think that is incredibly important. Now, unfortunately, over the last number of years, the spreadsheets took the center of that. And if you think about it, the accidents that spreadsheets actually caused, and the ill health, the issues, the ego that populates that spreadsheet. Spreadsheet's there, don't get me wrong, it's important. But we are now talking about a new realm of leadership that needs to be more humanistic and more heartfelt in how they do what they do, because people will join people. People don't join businesses anymore like they used to, and I think that's one of the core messages. Hopefully, our listeners will resonate with today. You have to be somebody and stand for something.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. So for the founders, the MDs, CEOs, whatever title they have, where do they go? Because I guess if you're at the top, it's an interesting place.
But you know what? One of the key observations I've made over the last 15 years, specifically at working with rescuing businesses and helping drive sales growth, particularly for and working with some very smart, interesting innovators and founders. Founders and CEOs. A classic founder is sort of somebody that's developed some technology, has got a wonderful idea and a vision, but has got limiting people skills and finds people a sort of necessary evil. It's quite interesting, and I think that often founders are very lonely. I call it lonely founder stroke MD syndrome. CEOs sometimes are very detached from the reality of people, what's going on, because so for example, if they've just raised capital and they're driven by the board in a sense that they've got private equity, or it's a very numbers focused sort of thankless sort of environment that they've managed to be taken hostage in. And that's another point that I'll make, is one of the reasons why SilentEgo has come about is because often what happens when you're growing an organization, and one of the questions I used to ask was, who's running the company, you or your ego? And often it's actually the ego that's took over, because it's all about the numbers. Numbers are important. We're not going to run away from that. But what we're talking about is the new realm of leadership and the new ways that need to be coming in place with the environments that we're actually developing now. So in essence, what I'm really trying to say is a lot of founders and a lot of CEOs are quite lonely. And sometimes they find it very difficult to actually transmit their heartfelt, essence, because they get caught up in this big bad business world that sometimes doesn't necessarily bring the best out of leaders.
So they're going to have to focus on that from an individual perspective. Then, if people's mindsets are going to be about people joining people, is there going to have to be a bit of a switch from their point of view?
Definitely, it's exactly that. It's leadership by default should be a wise. You should be wise. You should be offering wisdom and guidance and be experienced at what you're doing and how you actually engage and how you treat people. I call it a new energy, and I think the old energy served us well. I think it's got us where we are today, but I think we've got to start looking to the future. And this is the reason SilentEgo has come to life, is because it says it in the, the strap line. It's the soul of the business, and that soul is the whole, obviously, but it starts with the leadership and the leadership team, and it's about bringing people together and being, to have more love in the work environment. Let's use that word as a good settler. It's often not, it doesn't exist in a lot of environments. And, we have come from this sort of mechanistic, sort of spreadsheet driven culture. And I think, it has its place, but it's not center now. I think the future is very different.
So if we're all about moving forward, and and the soul of the business is about everything encapsulated in that, are we going to have to relabel things like the workforce? Is there going to have to be new terminology for that going forward?
It's a fantastic point. I mean, yes, without question, it's not the workforce anymore. It says it, doesn't it? Workforce. It sounds hard, doesn't it? It sounds like it's hard work. It's life force. If you look at it, the heart of the soul of the business, the leader and the leadership team, adapting style, and then bringing in the life force to actually engage the market. And, this ripples right through the whole system, customers, customer engagement. It's not being soft, it's about being, it's about being engaging. It's about, being the center of everything, but equally it's about bringing people together and adapting that life force style and being that central sort of energy point that people draw down on. And as we come forward, and you and I have discussed this, obviously, in run up to today's conversation, that the new world of work, it will be the employer and the employee in a different guise. So the employee will be interviewing, as an example, through intelligent questioning, the leader of the business. Yeah, of what the values are, what the purpose, what the mission is. We're not the first to say that. But at the same time, this whole sort of shift is coming quick, and people are going to need to feel energized by the environment. So what am I really trying to say? People join people. That's what I'm really trying to say. The business, the name, the product, the market, it serves in the right, appropriate way. But at the same time, it's all about people to people. It's never been any different, by the way. But we're just becoming now more conscious, if I can use that word, in the spiritual realm, hence the soul. We're becoming more conscious that we need to be more humanistic about how we lead our businesses and how we sort of build our businesses.
And I think an analogy may be able to be drawn from things like the sporting fraternity. If we look at where professional sport's been over the decades and how that's evolved, do you feel like business has been... I'll use the word left behind. Do you feel like it's evolved at the same pace? So if we look at professional sport and, gone are the days, if you like, of the drinking culture within professional football, and that's evolved in nutrition. And if you look at the teams now that surround those people, do you feel like business is now playing catch up in that space?
I think so. I think that, obviously there's, in the corporate world, in the, the mega company world, I think there's a lot of shifts over the last 5-10 years of, we have to have the codes of care for our workers. But, it's very difficult for those businesses to truly administer that in a real heartfelt way. Why? Because they're listed businesses, most of them. So they're serving the stock market, which is the greedy monster, right? And these codes of care, without question, I call it the James Hunt. If you look at where, professional sport is today, the likes of Ronaldo and, the like elite athletes, in the way they look after themselves and they get looked after. I mean, I'm not saying they go as, as deep as that, but equally, I think from a leadership perspective, it goes, a high performing company is a fit and healthy company. And I think that comes into it. And I think that you have to lead with example. So, as a business leader, having those sort of rituals, routines, and that kind of magnetism about we're a healthy company as one of our guiding principles of business is very, very important. And I think there is a big shift, one in action and on its way, because it's healthy. And if you look at, so for example, if you look at things like mental health, major challenges there, unfortunately. And unfortunately, I've had the experience of working with a number of people that have suffered significant mental health issues because the environment that they were actually operating in was very, repressive, and actually it took their souls hostage. And what's bizarre about these sort of situations is the leader doesn't really want that. They just get caught up in the overall, and they come back to this sort of point: is who's running the company, you or your ego? And most, when you really peel it all back, most leaders are really nice people. They really have a big heart, but just get caught up in the spreadsheet and leave the people behind. And it all becomes one big rush to drive results. And dare I say it, that most people don't want. How mad is that? So the principles of elite sport, for me, do come into it. And I think it comes into it in a way that if you look at motor racing sort of 25 years ago to where it is right now, that precision sort of code that they use for everything is highly valid. But at the end of the day, it's a human that drives that car to drive that result.
So is it about maybe even down to how we administer the day at work or at home, as it's slowly becoming?
Yeah, I mean, I think that more and more leaders are going to be faced with, obviously, what we term culture shock, where most people are going to be working, from home or in remote locations. And I think the style of leadership will need to adapt to sort of keep people on track and encourage people to perform at the highest level. And I don't think it's about slaving the hours anymore. Let's talk about that. I mean, we coined the phrase cyber time. It's about getting things done in order to achieve the objective, if we can use that language, but equally not at any price. I think, we use the term born to create and, create flow within the working environment. That comes back to, energy and how we utilize our energy in the most efficient ways. But equally beneath that is how we actually need to prepare ourselves for the working world going forward. And I think, businesses now, and it comes back to leadership, will need to start to rethink about that human integrity and that bringing good people into this operation and giving them flexibility, whether it's contractual flexibility, whether it's time flexibility. We talk about cyber time and cyber hours. The prophecy is we won't be working days anymore. We'll be working components of hours. So all of this is coming, and it's all coming pretty quick. And I think leadership styles will need to adapt to be able to attract the life force into their operations to be able to go forward. But SilentEgo stands for these things. It's new world. It's the soul of the issue. It's not the the stuff that we've all been, dare I say it, paid to be positive. Those days are over.
So the SilentEgo transmission is really going to be a wealth of powerful knowledge and the voice of reason that, I guess, as a founder or a CEO, potentially even, down to the investor community, the venture capital community can all pull from?
Definitely. I think that, the rock star VCs, the days are numbered. Yeah, I think you have to take a more empathetic approach to, investing in businesses now. It's not just about spreadsheets. It's about the humanistic values of what they're investing into and being patient for the right shaped results. That's important. I think leadership now needs to adapt a more sort of, dare I say this, a more feministic sort of approach to nurturing teams and bringing people together to deliver great output. But more importantly, be on point with meaning, that you're standing for something and you're creating the greater good. I think these are the times that we're actually we're challenged with. And I think equally, the bizarre thing about this, I think this is quite natural. I don't think there's any rocket science to any of this. I think this sits in all of us. But I think we now need to sort of step up and, come forward and say, well, I'm just, a natural leader and I am what I am and this is who we are. And, putting that code of love within the structure and the likes is very important, whether you're an investor, an entrepreneur or whatever. It's not about the old capitalistic values. This is about life capitalism. We're on the precipice of the revolution of life. And I think it starts with the world of work and the environments we're creating. So yes, there is accountability without question. And, once again, it comes back to, it's all about the soul. And we've all got it. We just need to access it. And
for anyone who's listening at this point in time, who do you want to talk to? And what would you say to somebody who says, I've never sat and had and done a podcast or a transmission, and what would you say to them?
Well, let's use some good old-fashioned language here. What's in it for them? Right. Well, I'll tell you what's in it for them. It's about basically, firstly, a good leader makes himself vulnerable. So come and sit in the chair and I'm going to ask some very powerful questions that are going to be, I'm sure going to be well answered. But equally, it's about, it's not about the business brand here, right? It's about the individual. But bear in mind what we've just been talking about. The business brand, yes, it will have, the website will say all of these things, your services, your market, you've got all of those things right. This is about the individual. This is about the chief executive, the founder or the entrepreneur coming and talking about what they stand for, what they're about, talking about the stories of experience. If you're a veteran, big question would be, if you had your time again, what would you do different? I guarantee some of the subject matter that we've just touched on will be in there somewhere. To the entrepreneur, what have you got in mind? What's coming? I think this is going to be quite exciting. But the distribution of this is obviously going to be global. So it's going to be good for promoting their brand as an individual with that heart-centered outlook. And, I think if we can bring this together, then by default, they're getting the visibility that they require, but authentic. This is not about, just coming here to talk about how good and brilliant you are. It's not about that. It's about, what you stand for. It's purpose. If we look at purpose, passion, profit, that's what we're all about. Yeah. But not profit at any price, which is what we've just come from. The last 50 years plus has been a hard grind. It's served us well, but it's not going to serve us for the future, which comes back to, if we keep doing what we're doing, we're not going to get where we need to be. And we all know that we're on the precipice of new, and it's going to start with, bringing good leadership capability in office with real humanistic values. And that's what, we stand for. And that's what to expect. So if you're a big ego looking to be transitioned, more than happy to talk. But equally, if you've got something really cool that you want to talk about as regards, where you're going with your business, likewise, let's communicate and let's make it happen.
Excellent. And for the leaders that are out there at the moment, how should they get in touch?
I think the best thing to do is check us out on egostream.com. On transmissions page, which is where SilentEgo sits. This is a launch. We've got some very interesting guests coming up in September, and I'd really like you to reach out to us and let's start a conversation.